I didn't think I'd live long enough in tech to be called old man by a CEO who still says, let's circle back, like it's a personality. I didn't think it would happen in a room I helped wire, under lights I signed off on, in front of engineers I'd trained to ship clean, boring, reliable code. But there I was at 9:07 a.m., standing with a paper cup that tasted like burnt almonds, when he smirked and said it loud enough for the back row to hear, enjoying the 8 grand a month, old man. People laughed the way you laugh at something you don't want to be part of. Quick, eyes down, shoulders tight. I didn't laugh. My manager didn't either. She went pale in a way makeup can't fix. If you need a picture of me, it's simple. 42. Sleep in my shoulders. Wedding band. 2 identical pairs of boots by the door so I never have to think about what to wear. 15 years in the same company. Through 3 rebrands, 2 office moves, and 1 acquisition that gave everyone new badges and the same broken printer. I'm not special. I make things work, and I don't talk much about it. Mark, our brand new CEO, talks for both of us. His slide deck had the usual religious language about velocity and disruption, words that lift until they break. He didn't know me. He knew my salary. He knew the shape of the graph where payroll dips if you cut the gray heads first. He knew how to make a room laugh and how to hold the pause just long enough to look fearless. It's funny what passes for courage when you're holding the microphone. The all hands was supposed to be about aligning incentives. He said the phrase 12 times. I counted because engineers count. We have to reward impact, he said, leaning on the word like a gym bench. No more tenure trophies. He said it right before he pointed the clicker at the compensation slide and then at me, like a party magician directing attention. Some folks are comfortable, he smiled. 8K a month comfortable. Then the line, how's that feel, old man? I heard the laugh before I felt it. Sound gets there first. I didn't move. People looked away like my face was a screen showing something you regret clicking. The VP of sales barked one of those laughs that always sound a little like a cough. A junior dev on the left swallowed too loudly. And to my right, Laura, HR director since the before times, lost the color in her lips. She wore a thin gold chain she never took off. She reached up for it without thinking, and then dropped her hand. That's when I knew the joke had run into something real. Mark kept moving. He always moved. He walked the stage like he was waiting for applause marks to light up. He switched to a slide with confetti emojis that weren't supposed to look like emojis. New bonus structure, he announced, to reward contributors who act like owners. The slide was a tiered pyramid that looked like a tech bro food group chart. There was a slice called Legacy Adjustment you could miss if you blinked. People clapped anyway because clapping is easier than being the one person who doesn't. The meeting ended with a playlist the intern picked. We filed out past a table of fruit that bruised if you breathed on it. I tossed my cup and kept my hands in my pockets, which is how I do my best thinking. Mark drifted toward a knot of people and laughed with his whole jaw, like he practiced in a mirror. He didn't look at me again. He didn't need to. The line had done its job. It told the room what he thought I was. Laura caught up to me by the elevator. You okay? She asked, voice flat, eyes busy. HR voices learn to walk on level floors. I'm not hurt, I said. It sounded true and wasn't. She pressed the button and then pressed it again the way people do when they want control over physics. He's energetic, she tried. He likes to provoke. He likes to win the room, I said. The doors stayed shut, and that line wasn't in the deck. No, she said, her mouth tightened at the corners. It wasn't. The elevator arrived with a bell loud enough to be a mercy. Inside, in the mirrored box, where truths go to fog up, she glanced at me and then away. If you want to file, she began and stopped. What she meant was, if I wanted to make it formal, we would both be in a different kind of room by afternoon. What she also meant, and didn't say, was that she'd already seen too much this quarter. I didn't file. I took the stairs back up when she got off on 3. My legs felt better when they had work to do. At my desk, the monitors woke to the thing I trust: text. My job is mostly arranging thoughts other people can run on a server without swearing. I fix quiet bugs, the kind you only see at scale, the kind that look like nothing and cost a house if you miss them. I opened the service that used to crash once a week and now only crashed when the vendor updated without warning. I read logs. I ran tests. My hands did the work I've taught them to do when my head wants to sprint. It's the best trick I know. The messages started. A DM from a new hire whose profile picture was a dog. That was messed up. A Slack thread with 3 reactions and no words. A calendar invite titled Quick Sync from my manager, Tyler, who's younger than my coffee habit and good at diffusing things that shouldn't explode. He slid into the chair beside my desk like a friend at a wake. "You all right?" he asked, doing the quiet voice thing. "I will be," I said. "He's trying to set tone," Tyler offered, and immediately looked like he hated himself for saying it. "You don't set tone with a target," I answered. He nodded like he wanted to nod harder. "Let me run cover on any follow-ups," he said. "If you want me in the room next time, I'll be in the room." "There won't be a next time," I said, and he heard the sentence land differently than I meant it. He started to say my name and then pretended to read my second monitor. When he left, he put a hand on my shoulder without thinking. It was the human version of a try-catch. I took lunch at my desk, because I always do. Habit is a rope you can hold when the bridge shakes. I ate something that used to be a sandwich and realized I hadn't tasted it. I wrote a short note to myself on a yellow sticky. It had a single word: lines. I stuck it under the lip of the keyboard, where I keep decisions. At 2:30, I went down to facilities to check a wiring run I didn't need to check. The guy at the counter had been there longer than me and always smelled like citrus cleaner. He told me about his daughter's soccer game, and I listened because listening clears a space in your head. On the way back, I passed the glass conference room with the plant no one waters because everyone thinks someone else will. Mark was in there with 2 board members on screens. His hands made shapes in the air like he was tracing logos. He saw me and didn't see me. You get used to that in rooms where money makes light. I made 1 call at 4, not to a lawyer, not to my wife. I called my own number, the one I keep for things that can't live on company hardware, and dictated a note into the voicemail, because that's how I don't lose things. I said the date, the time, and the sentence. "Enjoying the 8K a month, old man." I said it exactly without anger, like I was reading a line of code to a rubber duck. Then I hung up and felt, if not better, then balanced. On the way out, the lobby security guard raised a hand the way we always do. I raised mine back. The evening air hit my face soft and cold. I could smell rain that hadn't decided yet. In the reflection of the glass, I looked like a man who had stayed long enough to see the building change around him, and not long enough to become part of the furniture. I stood there a minute longer than I needed to and let the door close behind me. At home, I took off my boots and lined them up like I always do. My wife asked how my day was, and I said, "Full," which is the truth you use when the bigger truth would ruin dinner. I washed my hands until the meeting felt like it wasn't on them anymore. Later, when the house was quiet and the dishwasher clicked like a metronome, I pulled out a legal pad and wrote 3 bullet points under the word lines. HR knows more than she can say. Compensation slide was not an accident. Record everything you don't want to forget. I capped the pen and listened to the machine rinse what it could. I didn't sleep badly. I didn't sleep well. I slept like a man who knows the route he takes to work by muscle memory, and also knows the road crews set up cones while he wasn't looking. In the morning, I made coffee that didn't taste like almonds, and ironed my shirt because pressed fabric is a small declaration that you're not surrendering. I tied my boots. I locked the door. I walked to my car with the quiet certainty of someone who had finally drawn a shape around what he would not carry past the lobby again. The next week, the air at the office changed. Not loudly, just a faint static in every hallway conversation, a cautious smile behind every good morning. People started checking Slack before opening their mouths. That's how you know fear's moved in, when silence starts editing your sentences for you. Mark's joke from the meeting had turned into a meme in a private chat somewhere. I didn't see it, but I heard the echo. "Old man," someone whispered once when I walked past the kitchen. It wasn't cruel, just lazy. That's worse. I focused on code. It's the one thing in life that still behaves like math. You give it logic, it gives you truth. Everything else in that building, the politics, the posturing, the quick huddles, it all ran on lies with a glossy finish. But that was just the beginning. 2 days after the meeting, Laura, HR, stopped by my desk, pretending to need a signature. She lowered her voice. "Andrew, if anything like that happens again, let me know. Off the record, all right?" "Off the record means you already know it will," I said. She didn't deny it, just held the paper still until I signed it. Her hand was shaking slightly, not from fear, but from restraint. Then she walked away, leaving the faint scent of perfume and guilt. That afternoon, I stayed late to run system diagnostics. Or that's what the log would say. In reality, I was digging into the bonus reports stored on our internal server, the ones we weren't supposed to access. They weren't encrypted, just buried. And what I found, there was a folder named Legacy Adjustment, just like the one from Mark's presentation. Inside, spreadsheets, payment schedules, audit notes, lines and lines of numbers that didn't add up. It showed bonus reallocations, thousands taken from senior staff and reassigned to innovation team leads. Problem is, those team leads didn't exist. Fake employees, shell accounts, bonuses that never reached their names. It was a digital ghost town filled with stolen paychecks. I leaned back in my chair, stared at the monitor, and felt my pulse in my jaw. 15 years of loyalty reduced to a decimal scam. I made a copy, quietly, compressed the folder, renamed it Draft Archive Old, and moved it to my personal cloud, encrypted, password-protected, off-grid. At 8:17 p.m., the office was empty except for me and the hum of the servers. I stood by the window, watching the parking lot lights blink in the rain, and realized what I was looking at wasn't theft. It was hierarchy. The people at the top calling it optimization, the people below calling it bad luck. The next morning, Mark walked into the bullpen like a man stepping onto a stage. He wore a navy suit that cost more than my car, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Big week, team," he said. "Let's keep the energy high. Innovation doesn't sleep." He looked directly at me when he said it, like a dare. At noon, my manager Tyler called me into a meeting with Mark. 3 chairs, 1 agenda item. Mark leaned back, index fingers pressed together, the universal sign of fake calm. "Andrew," he said, "we've noticed your productivity's dipped. Logs show fewer commits. Everything okay at home?" Home. That word, they always use it when they're about to pull the rug. "I'm fine," I said. "Good. Because we're shifting some roles to match our growth. The company's evolving fast and we need agile players." He paused, giving me time to fill the silence. I didn't. "You've been with us a long time, but, fresh perspectives help us stay competitive. Maybe it's time for you to explore something slower paced?" He said it like a doctor recommending retirement before the disease is terminal. I looked at Laura, who was sitting across from me. She wasn't supposed to be there. HR never sits in a friendly meeting unless it's already over. Her lips pressed into a thin, pale line. "I see," I said finally. "Nothing's final," Mark added, smiling like a man who enjoys mercy as theater. "We'll discuss transitions, exit packages, that sort of thing. You've done great work, truly." He slid a folder across the table. My name, my salary, my expiration date. Laura didn't look up. I signed nothing. When I left the room, Tyler was waiting by the elevators. His face said he'd been told to keep it professional. His eyes said he hated every second of it. "You okay?" he whispered. "Yeah," I said. "Just writing a new script." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "You'll see," I said. and I smiled for the first time that week. Small, private, honest. Because here's the thing about calling someone old man in tech. Sometimes that man wrote the code that keeps your whole company breathing. And sometimes he owns it. That night, I stayed in the office until security flicked the lights twice, the silent warning for time to go. I closed my laptop, picked up my bag, and walked past the glass conference room one last time. Mark was still there, laughing with a group of execs over drinks. As I passed, his laughter cut through the glass. And for the first time in 15 years, I didn't feel small. I felt still. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd already filed the paperwork that would decide who really owned our most valuable asset. The code, the patents, the product. I'd built it. And under the law, that meant it was mine. He just hadn't read the fine print yet. The day they let me go, the weather was beautiful. It's strange how the world doesn't bother to match your mood, how the sky can look like a screensaver while your life quietly deletes itself. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. I walked out of that building with a cardboard box and a company-branded hoodie that still smelled like the air vents. Inside the box were 15 years of my life. A coffee mug, 2 hard drives, and a photo of my old team, back when we still believed management meant mentorship. Mark shook my hand on the way out. Of course he did. He smiled that slow, self-satisfied grin that made interns laugh and senior engineers leave. "No hard feelings, right?" he said. "None that matter," I replied. He took that as forgiveness. It wasn't. It was documentation. By sunset, my corporate email was dead, my access revoked, and my name quietly erased from the employee directory. But there was one thing Mark hadn't erased. The signature on a patent application filed 3 years ago, a patent that covered the neural optimization engine the entire company's product ran on. That signature belonged to me, and unlike the code, a patent isn't stored on the company server. It's stored with the U.S. Patent Office, under the inventor's name. Mine. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with black coffee in silence. My wife asked if I was okay. "I'm fine," I said, and I was. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't reacting. I was planning. I opened my personal laptop, logged into the encrypted drive I'd created weeks ago, and began sorting the files. Patent documents. Verified and filed. Source code logs. Timestamps showing authorship. Emails. Proof of bonus reallocations. Screenshots. Mark approving fraudulent transfers. I labeled the folder Audit. Then I sent a single message to a contact I hadn't spoken to in years, Ellen Morse, a former company attorney who'd left after disagreeing with management. Her reply came 2 hours later. "Andrew, if what you're saying is true, don't send anything yet. Bring it to me in person." We met the next day at a coffee shop that smelled like burnt espresso and paper. Ellen looked older, sharper, like someone who'd seen too many NDAs burn in courtrooms. She read the documents one by one, her pen tapping the table. When she finished, she exhaled like someone finally seeing daylight. "You realize what you have here?" she asked. "Evidence," I said. "No," she corrected. "Leverage." She explained it to me like I was the CEO now, how the company's use of my patented code without a formal license could lead to injunctions, lawsuits, asset freezes, the kind of chaos that makes investors vanish before breakfast. I just nodded. "I don't want revenge," I told her. "I just want them to stop pretending they built it." "You'll get both?" she said quietly. 3 days later, the story broke. Not from me, but from a tech journalist Ellen had accidentally bumped into. The headline was clean, surgical. Wexlar AI faces legal dispute over core technology ownership. The article didn't name me, but everyone inside the company knew. Within hours, the Slack channels went dead. The investors started calling, and by noon, the company's website quietly removed every mention of proprietary neural framework from its product page. Mark's emails must have been fire that day. By Friday, my phone started ringing. Tyler first, then HR, then Mark himself. I ignored the first two. The third one, I answered. Andrew, he said, voice low, tight. We can fix this. We? I asked. No, Mark, you broke it. There was silence, the kind that means someone's finally realizing the math doesn't work in their favor. You're killing the company, he hissed. No, I said. You're killing your reflection. I hung up before he could respond. That night, I stood outside my house, barefoot on the porch, listening to the quiet hum of a world that suddenly made sense again. No more forced smiles, no more alignment meetings, just air, sky, and the sound of my own breathing. Inside, my wife poured me a drink. Are you done? She asked. Almost, I said. Because revenge isn't a single act, it's a sequence, and mine still had one more line to execute. The legal process would take months. The company would bleed slow, public, and humiliating. But I wasn't waiting for that. I'd already moved on. I built a new startup with 2 former engineers, people who still believed work could be honest. We wrote code from scratch, small, clean, human. Meanwhile, Wexler AI started missing updates. Investors pulled out. Mark gave a forced interview about legal complexities. He looked thinner, older, like maybe someone had called him old man that week. And I smiled, not out of spite, but because karma doesn't need help. It just needs patience. He thought it was over, but karma hadn't even started counting. It took 3 months for the board to finally remove Mark. 3 months of leaks, press releases written like apologies, and silence from the same executives who once laughed at his jokes. The last time his face appeared on the company website, it was next to the word resigned. When I read the article, I didn't feel joy, just gravity. That quiet pull when something heavy finally lands where it belongs. Wexlar AI filed a settlement before the lawsuit reached discovery. They didn't want a courtroom. They wanted a rasher. Ellen called me that morning. They're offering a buyout, she said. Full rights acknowledgement, a payout, and a clause that clears your name publicly. They want silence in exchange for dignity. Send it over, I said. When the papers arrived, I read every line twice. The legal phrases stacked neatly, professional and cold. But under all the noise, one truth remained. The company couldn't exist without the code I wrote. They had mocked me for being slow, old-fashioned, careful. And now they were paying for every minute I took to think things through. A week later, Laura called. I hadn't heard her voice since that meeting, the one where she couldn't look at me. Andrew, she said softly, I'm out too. I left after the board meeting. I couldn't keep cleaning up his mess. You never needed to, I said. She hesitated. There's one last thing. The board wants to send a formal letter of acknowledgement, hard copy. Old school. I thought you might like that. I didn't answer right away. Then I said, sure, send it. Paper still means something. The letter arrived 2 days later. Ivory envelope, embossed seal, signed by a man who had replaced Mark's empty chair. It was polite, distant, and precise, but tucked inside was a handwritten note, Laura's handwriting. For what it's worth, you taught me more about integrity than any of them ever did. I hope you're finally free. I folded the note once, placed it inside the patent binder, and locked it in my drawer. Not as a trophy, as proof that silence could be louder than applause. The payout hit my account a week later. I didn't buy a car. I didn't move. I didn't even tell my wife the full number. Money fixes things, but peace replaces them. I took a walk that morning, the same route I used to drive to work, just slower now. The office building looked smaller from the outside, almost fragile. A new logo already hung above the glass doors, like a child covering a bruise with a sticker. Through the tinted windows, I could still see the reflection of my own face, older, sharper, calm. I raised my coffee in a small, silent toast, not to them, to the man who finally stopped waiting for permission. That afternoon, Ellen called again. They want a quote from you for the press release, she said. Something professional, maybe a statement about collaboration. I laughed for the first time in months. Not the bitter kind, but the real one that comes when you're finally outside the storm. Tell them this, I said. Collaboration only works when both sides remember who built the foundation. She paused, then smiled through the phone. That's a little sharp. So was their smile, I said. Weeks turned into a rhythm. I started consulting. Small projects, clean code, quiet clients. I built a workspace in my garage with a single rule. No buzzwords, no politics, no fake smiles. Just work that made sense. Sometimes I'd hear from old coworkers. Tyler called once, said the place felt empty now. He used to make people laugh, Tyler said. He used to make people afraid, I corrected. We stayed silent for a few seconds. You ever think you'll come back? He asked. No, I said. Some doors are better locked. One evening I got a knock on my door. It was Laura, hair tied back, wearing the same gold chain. She handed me an envelope. Final copy of the settlement, she said. They wanted me to make sure you got it personally. I nodded. Thanks. She hesitated at the threshold, eyes scanning the quiet house. You look better, she said. I am, I replied. Peace is weird. You have to get used to the sound of nothing happening. She smiled. Most people never do. I looked at her, then at the envelope in my hand. Do you miss it? I asked. No, she said. But sometimes I miss believing it mattered. She turned to leave, then stopped. He really did think you'd just disappear, you know. Mark, he told the board you'd beg for your job back. I smiled, small and easy. Guess I surprised him. She laughed quietly. You always did. Then she walked down the steps, and for the first time, I didn't watch someone leave. I just closed the door. That night, I sat on my porch, coffee cooling beside me, papers stacked neatly on the table. The world was still except for the soft hum of crickets and the faint whistle of wind against the trees. In my inbox, there was a single email from an unknown sender, a journalist asking for my side of the story. I hovered over the reply button, then deleted it. Some stories aren't meant to be told. They're meant to be lived once, quietly, and then left behind. I looked out into the dark yard, at the reflection of porch light on my empty coffee cup, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Completion. Not victory, not vengeance, just stillness, the kind you earn. When he smirked that day, he thought he was watching me fall. Turns out, he was watching me stand.